Kia ora. Chapter 1, 1st of January, 365 days to go. Fishing boat, Treachery Bay, midnight. Fireworks exploded overhead, and even though the shoreline was 2 kilometres away, I could hear the shouts and cheers even from where I was in the fishing boat. Happy New Year, they shouted. Yeah, I thought. New Year it might be. Happy it sure wasn't. As our boat bobbed on the black water, yesterday's warning made me shiver. The new year seemed to loom ahead like some monster rising up from the deep. Every January since I could remember, Dad, Mum, my little sister Gabby and I piled into the car and headed towards the coast for the beach house at Treachery Bay. But this year, Dad wasn't with us. I looked at the guy sitting opposite me, my uncle, my dad's identical twin. Strangers couldn't tell them apart. To me, they looked completely different. Uncle Rafe's face somehow seemed harder than my dad's. Their features were identical. They were both tall with dark hair and squarish faces, but Dad often looked like he was thinking about a secret joke, while Rafe often looked like he was at a funeral. I was fair and slight like Mum, but hoped that I looked more like my dad than Rafe did. 12:13 a.m. The wind had risen, and I could no longer hear the hiss of the white-hot embers from the fireworks hitting the water. In the southwest, a huge bank of black clouds was about to swallow the moon. "Uncle Rafe," I said, "there's a big squall coming up. We've really got to be getting the boat back." I was suddenly aware that all the other small boats had disappeared. "Rafe, start the motor now. We've got to get back. The squall's going to hit any minute." I pulled out our life jackets, threw one to Rafe and put on my own. "Cal," he said, "don't you think you're worrying a bit too much?" "You don't know how fast the squalls move across this bay," I spat back at him. He'd only stayed at the beach house once or twice, and I couldn't remember him ever going out in a boat. "It's going to hit in minutes, trust me." 12:17 a.m. I'd been out in the same battered old tinny with Dad since I was 2. He'd taught me a lot about the estuary, lakes and bays, and right now the mood was murderous. The ocean was pushing its way in. I could see the dim white tops of the rolling breakers. The storm clouds were moving fast, and the night was almost pitch black. The building waves were sending our boat lurching. The outboard wouldn't start. Rafe fumbled and swore, trying again and again to get it going. I hoped the waves wouldn't get any bigger. Once waves get to a certain size, they collapse, and if a big one collapsed onto this little boat, it would capsize us, no question. "Here, give it to me," I called as I crawled towards the stern. "Let me have a go." I pushed Rafe out of the way, stumbling as a huge wave lifted our boat right up and then dropped us. "What are you doing?" he yelled at me. I ignored him, too intent on getting us out of this situation. I gripped the starter motor loop and pulled, but the engine just wouldn't kick. "It's flooded, I shouted. "You flooded it!" I knew Mum would be anxious, waiting on the beach, wondering why we hadn't come back yet. Again, I tried the outboard. Nothing. "Calm down, Callum," Rafe yelled at me over the deafening wind. "Let's just wait it out another 5 minutes. I looked at my uncle, who was drenched and unsteady. "We haven't got another 5 minutes. 11:39 a.m. The squall surged through the ocean on gale-force winds. The tops of larger waves were breaking over the boat, and despite my frantic bailing, we were taking on water too fast. "Grab a bucket," I yelled. "Hurry up and start bailing. We could lose it." "The motor still won't start," Rafe yelled back. All around us were huge, shuddering sea walls, hemming us in on every side. A wave suddenly pulled the water out from under us and smacked our tinny down hard into the empty trough. I swore and hung on tightly with one hand while still trying to bail water out with the other. It was a losing battle. For every litre of water my bailing threw out, 10 more crashed in. Already it was slopping heavily around my shins. The boat shouldn't be floundering like this, I thought. The buoyancy tanks in the hull were designed to keep it floating, even with a lot of water on board, even if it capsized. What was wrong? 1:01 a.m. The stern of the boat was now sitting low in the waterway down by the outboard. The front of the boat lifted like the top end of a seesaw. Somehow the buoyancy tanks weren't working. We were sinking. 1:12 a.m. Then came the rain, drenching us in blinding sheets. Rafe continued to make useless attempts to restart the outboard. At least we've got life jackets, I thought. We won't drown. I groped around for the rope to lash us together in case the boat sank, which I sensed something was nearing. I looked up and I couldn't move. It was like facing a nightmare. A monstrous 10-metre wave was towering above us. There was nothing I could do. I heard Rafe shout out something just before the great wall of water trembled above us and curled over in an avalanche. And that was the last thing I saw. My arms and legs were ripped in all directions as I corkscrewed deeper and deeper into the seething water. My fears about rising and bashing into the underside of the hull quickly changed to absolute panic as I realised my life jacket, suddenly extremely heavy, was dragging me deeper and further away from the surface. Wildly, I kicked out, struggling to free myself. I knew I could hold my breath for almost a minute. I had to make it to the surface. In a fleeting moment, a blurry, almost forgotten memory of my dad's face seemed to hover in the ocean above me. His eyes were desperate. He was fully clothed and swimming down through the water towards me. And I, a 3-year-old who carelessly slipped off the jetty, watched his terror as I sank helplessly below to the bottom of the bay. He saved me from drowning that day. He was gone, but he'd saved me again. Mum and Gabby couldn't take another death. 1:25 a.m. With the last of my strength, I tore off the life jacket. I kicked and stroked upwards towards a surface that seemed impossibly far away. I felt like I was getting nowhere, but I kept fighting through the crushing tons of water, and I pictured Dad. And then, when I couldn't hold my breath 1 second longer, I burst through the wild surface. 1:26 a.m. By now the squall was at its worst. The wind lashed me with spray. I grabbed hold of the boat, which was now riding bottom up only centimetres above the waves. I clung to it and sucked in huge gulps of air whenever I could get my mouth above water. I couldn't see my uncle anywhere. "Rafe!" I screamed, spitting out salty water. But my voice came out like a whisper beneath the sound of the storm. "Rafe!" I screamed again, before being thrown around by another massive wave. This time the force of the storm tossed me to the other end of the barely visible boat. Somehow it was afloat, and even though the surge crashed my body hard against the hull, I caught hold of the anchor rope and quickly looped it around my wrist. 1:35 a.m. The rope rubbed salt into my broken skin. I could only hope that Rafe was okay and making his way towards the shore for help, but in these conditions, what should have been a 30-minute swim might have taken hours. The tinny had flipped over and trapped air beneath its upturned hull. I was lucky. While the boat stayed on the surface, I had a chance. 2:59 a.m. I knew I must have been way out to sea now, kilometres from the beach. The anchor couldn't possibly hold against the violence of the storm. I shivered from wind chill and being in the water too long. I wondered if it was shock as well. My lashed hand was aching and I glanced down to find a long gash running across the back of my right hand under the rope. Things Dad had said came back to me. I could almost hear his voice in my head. "Callum, you know what to do in this situation. Relax and tread water. A person can stay afloat for hours if they do that." I tried to stay calm by thinking of all the reasons why I couldn't die. I had to find out what Dad meant in his last letter. I had to see the pictures he drew while he was in hospital, the ones that Dr. Edmondson was going to send me. And now the crazy guy on the street? I had to know what was going on. 4:13 a.m. The storm was easing. The swell was still strong and choppy, but the worst of the weather had moved on. Carefully I lifted my body, trying to see if I could find the shoreline. I was looking for lights, but all I could see was 360 degrees of black. I blinked, aware painfully of how swollen and sore my eyes were. Slowly I began to make out the shapes of the waves in the moonlight. My hand was hurting badly, and I loosened my hold on the anchor rope. Blood seeped from my injured flesh. Blood in the water. Another flashback hit me, this time a horrible image of a dead dog washed up on the beach, or at least the head, shoulders and front legs of a dog. It had been torn in half, and there's only one thing in the sea that can do that. An icy fear shivered through me. I started reassuring myself. Sharks rarely came into the estuary. Surely by now searchers would be getting ready to start looking for me at first light. All I had to do was hang on stay with the boat and wait for rescue. 5:02 a.m. It seemed as though I'd been hanging on, head against the hull, rope around my wrist, for hours, trying to stay alert. Exhaustion was making me weak, and I could barely feel my fingers. Then something bumped into the boat hard. I hoped we'd collided with something submerged, drifting in the water. I looked around. The sky was much lighter, but I couldn't see anything but the chopping waves. Another bump. This time so hard I almost lost my grip on the rope. I still couldn't see anything, but I knew something was out there. I was freezing cold, but broke out in a sweat. A third bump, so hard that it knocked me completely into the water. I splashed and slipped, scrambling back up to the top of the upturned boat, hauling myself up by the ridge. In the grey light, I spotted a 3-metre shark rolling over, exposing its pale belly before disappearing again. I waited, sick with fear, praying it had gone away. I searched around for a weapon, anything to try and defend myself. Tossing on the waves and just out of my reach was the boat's jag hook. Yet another powerful bump, and the upturned boat and I, clinging desperately above, started to move over the water. The shark was under the boat, powering us along. Any minute now it would bash through the hull and grab me. And then just as suddenly as it began, the motion stopped. I watched the dorsal fins speed away. Was it leaving? The shark had pushed me and the boat closer to the floating debris. I saw again the long wooden handle of the jag hook floating nearby. And then, in the background, I saw the vanishing fins slow, turn and flick round. The shark was coming back, and straight for me. Without even thinking about it, I seized the hook. From somewhere I was aware of a loud throbbing noise, but I was focused entirely on the huge shark ploughing through the water. Whoop, whoop, whoop. I didn't have time to think about anything but the beast before me. I raised the jag hook ready. The shark charged, and I whacked the hook down as hard as I could on its head. Its cold left eye stared at me as it rolled underwater again. "Come on!" I screamed furiously. "Where are you?" Not knowing where it was lurking was worse even than seeing it. I looked up in the direction of the noise, and in a brief moment of relief I saw a helicopter in the sky. But when I turned back round, I was met with the shark, and it had returned with a friend. Through the pink gold surface of the dawn sea, the two fins came straight at me. The first one hit the boat. I was terrified that if I hit the shark and the hook got stuck in its sandpaper skin, I'd be pulled into the water where the second one circled. The first shark disappeared. "Hang on!" shouted a male voice. "You're going to be okay. Just hang on, Callum." I faced the circling shark, hook raised. The first shark was still hidden somewhere. There was no way I could fight off two of them. Above me, an orange-overalled man was being winched down from the helicopter. "Sharks!" I screamed. "There are sharks!" The first shark suddenly revealed itself, coming at me with open jaws, ready to ravage. With every ounce of strength, I roared and smashed the jag hook across its upper jaw. It dropped away, and for a second I thought I was safe. The upturned boat lurched. The second shark was underneath me now. "Hurry!" I screamed into the sky. The orange-overalled man couldn't hear me above the noise of the rotors and the engine. The sea flattened as the helicopter came in lower. The second shark surfaced. Now the two of them raced towards me. Somehow I made out the man's words. "I'm coming in close now. I'm going to grab you, okay?" What if he missed? What if I fell straight into the teeth of the two sharks? I didn't know where to look, what to do. The first shark hit hard, gnashing its jaws, tugging and shaking the boat. "Let go, Cal! Let go and grab me!" The helicopter came down so low then I thought it would end up in the sea. Suddenly the shark released the boat, leaving three of its teeth embedded in the aluminium. The voice yelled, "Closer now! Grab onto me!" The second shark knocked the boat, almost throwing me into the water again. It was now or never. Just as I grabbed onto my rescuer, the first shark charged the boat with such force that its body skimmed over it. I wrenched myself up fast. The man tightened the rescue sling, clamped his legs around me, and then swung me away to safety. Beneath me, the sharks lunged, jaws gaping wide.